The biggest national security threat is to this country right now? It's the total dysfunction in Washington. The fact that so little can be done by the Congress. They can't even resolve the issue of Homeland Security. They can't deal with budgets. They can't deal with immigration reform. They can't deal with infrastructure. They can't deal with other issues. If they wind up not being able to deal with this war authorization, that sends a terrible message to the world.
Former Defense Secretary Leon Panetta, who had some things critical to say about the Obama administration and the commander-in-chief, but seemed right there to be getting back to the talking points of the left, saying it's dysfunction, and the way he put that sounded a bit partisan from my perspective.
You think so? I think he's, for the most part, he's...
Oh, it's smart. It always polls, especially for people not involved in it. Go, everything in area, it's all this dysfunction, it's all this disagreement. However, there are times when disagreement and debate are proper. Yes. We had hoped to have we may have a debate right here. Our friend Ari Rabenhoft, who usually mans the left in our political panel, we just found out he's a bit under the weather. So Ari, honestly, from your pals on the right, we hope you feel better. And speaking of those on the right, let's bring in our next guest. He's the managing editor of the Shark Tank political blog. From our Newsmax TV newsroom, why, it's Javier Manjarres. So, you just heard Leon Panetta.
Right.
Is it a legitimate complaint, D.C. dysfunction, or did he retreat to those Democrat talking points after having a few words critical of the current commander-in-chief?
Well, I would say both. There is a dysfunction in Washington, but it's partly because, or mostly because of President Obama. He is actually the biggest national security threat to this country. The Republicans don't want to work with his un-American foreign and domestic policies. They've proven to be dangerous and continue to be dangerous for the United States of America. So yes, there is a dysfunction there because no one is working with the president. Who wants to work with the president like this? Again, with his failed economic and foreign policies.
Well, Joe Scarborough on Morning Joe seems to understand something this president doesn't. At least that's what some would say. Take a listen to what he had to say.
Again, these aren't just a bunch of sociopaths that just want to blow up things and see beheadings on the internet. That there is, as twisted as it is, there is a religious component to this, and understanding that allows you to counter it.
So if our friends on MSNBC can get it right and spell it out, why is the president unwilling to this day to associate the words Islamic and terror?
Well, let's not forget Congresswoman Debbie Wasserman also referred to them as Islamic fundamentalists. And the reason why, and I've said it before, President Obama is sympathetic to everything that's Muslim, including radical Islamic terrorists. He doesn't want to call out the obvious, that everyone knows what it is, as being Islamic terrorism, because he doesn't want to offend not one Muslim out there. And that's because, like I said, he is sympathetic to the Muslim religion because he used to be a Muslim up until 20 some odd years ago. He hasn't changed he's changed his religion, but I don't think he's changed his mindset, how he thinks, and his sympathies towards that religion.
I'm not even going to tackle whether or not President Obama is Muslim or not, because it really doesn't matter, because we live in a country that believes in freedom of religion.
Right.
But let's go back to what you were saying about the president not recognizing this and not calling it for what it is. As JD pointed out, our friends at MSNBC are calling it Islamic terrorism. The president is not doing that. But is the president not doing that because he doesn't want to give them the satisfaction and justification for what this group wants to be known as, and that is the true Muslims?
No, again, this is a holy war that they're conducting in the Middle East. It's been going on for decades, hundreds of years. Again, President Obama, for whatever reason, is sympathetic to the Islamic religion. I have no issues with the Islam as a whole, but to these fundamentalists, this is what they want, a president that's being submissive to them in their cause. He refuses to call for what it is.
But is it being submissive, or is it just not recognizing them for what they want to be known as, which is this Islamic caliphate?
Right, but that's what they want. And again, everyone in the world is referring to them as Islamic fundamentalists, which they are. Even some of these European countries are. Israel, of course, is. And even some of these Arab countries are. But why isn't the president doing so? Why does he refuse to acknowledge it? Why does he continue calling these random acts of crime or terror instead of what it is, Islamic fundamentalism? He is sympathetic to this cause. Not to the radical Islam, but any Islamic cause whatsoever.
And regardless of the president's lack of willingness to describe who these people are, seems to me they're advancing their own agenda. They're on the march. They just beheaded 21 Coptic Christians. They're apparently poised, or someone is poised, to attack in Kabul. We'll talk about that later this morning. There's lots more to talk about. Javier Manjarres stays with us, and we'll continue the discussion right after this on America's Forum.
But what we're facing is a strong headwind from the new Republican Congress, who are doing every single thing that they can to make it harder for Hispanics and Latinos and other Americans to succeed. So at every step of the way, this is a Congress that has been so far and looks to be as anti-Hispanic as you can get.
Anti-Hispanic or pro-law enforcement? Congressman Joaquin Castro, a Texas Democrat, blaming those mean old Republicans for holding back Hispanics. This as the chair of the Democrat House Caucus, Javier Becerra, is telling illegals who might be eligible for the president's unconstitutional executive amnesty to, quote, get ready. Oh, boy. Let's bring back the managing editor of the Shark Tank political blog, Javier Manjarres. Javier, you're not named John Smith. Just for the record, to be pro-law enforcement, how can that be anti-Hispanic?
First of all, JD, that's probably the most ignorant, asinine statement I've ever heard in my life. But there's no surprise coming from Joaquin Castro, who he and his brother were both raised by one of the most radical, racist Hispanic activists, their mother. And they write about it. They've written about it. Look, I don't know if you've noticed, but I have to have a tinge of Hispanic in me. I kind of look Hispanic, so I kind of know what I'm talking about here. That is disingenuous, to say the least. Republicans are not anti-Hispanic. They're not anti-Latino, as they say. Again, like you said, immigration reform is important. You know, we need to secure the border. Legalization is down the road for a lot of these immigrants, but it has to be done legally. Again, Joaquin and them, this is their wedge issue. This is their issue. They feel that they can ride all the way through every election cycle to scare Hispanics into thinking that the big bad wolf, which is a Republican Party, it wants to deport every single one of them. That's not the case. My family doesn't feel that way. A lot of my friends who are Hispanic and Latino don't feel this way, and most Hispanics and Latinos don't feel this way. So this is just them trying to do what they do best, to scare potential voters and current voters, Hispanics, into thinking that Republicans want to boot them out of the country.
What do you think about this tug of war that's been going on right now with Congress and the president trying to tie immigration reform with Homeland Security?
Well, you know what it is? I've been saying all along. The border issue, the southern border issue especially, is a national security issue. It always has to be. We don't know who's coming across the border. Look, again, anyone by the name of Ayatollah whomever or Mohammed who's planning on blowing up your local grocery store is not going to check green cards at the door. They don't care who they blow up. We don't know who. We didn't know who is coming over the border. And we have to be more concerned again with the national security threat and the security threat as a whole. But again, for them to try to tie the two, I mean, arguments can be made on both sides. I think the Democrats are trying, again, more the scare tactics to scare Hispanics into voting for them down the road and accepting a lot of these welfare issues, these handouts, if you would, to solidify some of that vote down the road.
About a minute 30 remains, Javi. I just want to talk more about what's going on in Washington, specifically the Senate. Right now, the Democrats have filibustered and threatened filibuster about this effort to bring up the House bill, which of course separates out the president's, in my opinion, unconstitutional executive amnesty. I think also the way the Constitution reads, it's unconstitutional for this president to declare amnesty. But in the final analysis, will Mitch McConnell roll over and this small number of Democrats, by threatening a filibuster, rule the roost in the Senate?
You're right. It is unconstitutional and un-American. And again, as far as Mitch McConnell, it's anyone's guess. He's proven the fact in the past that he's rolled over. We don't know. They have the majority, so he may be a little tougher on this. But again, remember, they don't have enough votes to overturn a presidential veto. So again, it's anyone's guess is just as good as anyone's.
But as a political consultant and a political observer, could the message not get across if the Democrats aren't doing this? They're the guys shutting things down and basically holding our national security hostage for illegals. 15 seconds.
Absolutely, but what media outlet is going to report that? Who's going to go against the talking points from the Democrat Party? The left, 40-some-odd% of all Democrat reporters have been outed as being Democrats. So why would they counter that big message, that the big issue, the wedge issue that Democrats have been harping for all these years and will continue? No one's going to do it.
Well, that's why we're not the media, we're Newsmax, and also we know that people can read and judge for themselves. Javier Manjarres, we thank you for your time, and America's Forum continues right after this.